Happy Easter, everybody. Welcome back to Sports Crunch with DKROM. This is our fourth edition of our Dash to the Draft series. And it's hard to believe we are just over a month away. Tomorrow, we will be officially a month away from the 2016 NFL Draft. And this is one of the most exciting times of year. Even though there's no football games going on, the draft is always something I personally look forward to. And today, I'm proud to welcome for the first time on this program to talk about the running back prospects in this year's 2016 NFL Draft, Mr. Isaiah Fee. Isaiah, welcome to the show. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure talking football with you, Isaiah, and you're very welcome as always. And let's start off the running back talk with talking about the consensus top running back in this class, Ezekiel Elliott from Ohio State. And there's been like some people, I'm not saying most, but some that say that Ezekiel Elliott is not worth the top 10 pick. He might be worth it later in the first round, but not worth the top 10 pick because he's not as good as Todd Gurley. And you can't compare him to Todd Gurley, but I completely disagree. Zeke Elliott is a very special player. He's an every down back who knows how to do it all. And I think he is absolutely worth consideration in the top 10, especially. And there's a lot of hype going around that the Dallas Cowboys are going to take him at 4 if they can't trade up with the Titans at 1 to get Wentz or Goff for a quarterback. And so the basic question is, especially with that offensive line and especially with Tony Romo not getting any younger and not getting any healthier, or not getting less injury prone, I meant to say, is Zeke Elliott worth it at number 4 for the Cowboys?
No, not at all. Right now, I think they're good at the running back position. They just signed Alfred Morris. They have Darren McFadden for another year. I don't think it's the right move to make it at number 4. I mean, later in the draft, you can go for a Derrick Henry. You can go to Alex Collins and that. Some people like that. But number 4, you need to find a blue chip player. Somebody that can help you, like either with quarterback. Somebody to be behind Romo and you learn from for possibly maybe half a year or two. The half year is due to probably injury, but if it's a move like that, I think they need to go pass rusher or at least cornerback. I'd go Vernon Hargraves personally. Their secondary had no interceptions at all last year, and they just drafted a cornerback last year, but basically he played a safety role for them due to Barry Church getting injured. I think they need to continue to address it until it gets better. Either that or they go Joey Bosa. If that's not their go linebacker, you got Miles Jack sitting right there.
Yes, and just to reference that, Lance Zierlein of NFL.com reported on Friday, I believe, that the Cowboys were supposedly not in love with Joey Bosa. And I'm not going to discount anything Lance Zierlein reports, but that said, we are in the middle of misleading season, as I like to call it, where every NFL front office likes to mislead everybody because they don't want to let the rest of the league know who they're planning on taking or what their plans are in the draft these final weeks leading up to it. But if Ezekiel Elliott is not worth it at number 4, do you think he's worth it in the top 10 with any team, like let's say the Eagles at 8?
I don't think he's that type of talent. Him and Todd Gurley are really good players, but Todd Gurley's on a whole nother level. Ezekiel Elliott, he's a different type of runner. I can see him maybe in the mid of the first round, maybe to late first round, but in the top 10, it's a little too high for me. But yet again, this is also lying season, so we could just be hearing this stuff,
Yes. You absolutely said it. We cannot take anything seriously until April 28th, and there's going to be a lot of smoke screens being floated out these next 4 weeks. I can't say enough. And you mentioned Derrick Henry, the Heisman Trophy winner. And Derrick Henry is a very interesting prospect because, yes, he looked very good at Alabama, and he's pretty nimble for a guy weighing over 240 pounds. You, based on your Twitter feed this year, you seem to be a pretty you seem to be a fan of Derrick Henry's, but there's
Uh, I'm not really that much a fan of him. Uh, it's just I have serious questions about his lateral agility. Moving sideline to sideline. He's more of a downhill runner. He is basically a team or scheme specific. If he were to go to the Cowboys, that'd be an ideal situation, but right there, it's all predicated on what offensive line he has. He had a great offensive or good offensive line at Alabama. He's going to need a offensive line to open up holes. Um, I think he's a decent running back, but I don't know if he's a great running back like everybody seems to think.
Yes, and as many scouts say, like I was reading, like the take of like Rob Ray and Dave Brugler, who I believe are the main authors of the Lindy's annual Lindy's magazine draft edition. They say that Derrick Henry, quote, he offers exceptional speed for a back of his size, but he's not as powerful as his frame suggests, and struggles to make defenders miss in tight quarters. And I'm sure you agree with that sentiment.
Yeah, this has been a sort of a situation where they have to have a second back at Alabama and Kenyon Drake, who's had to spell him out on third down because he's not the type that is a three down running back. Uh, he's limited in areas where he has to have a second guy in the rotation. If you're looking for a guy that you want to take in the possibly late first or early second, you want a guy that can possibly be a three down back. But if you're looking for a rotational guy, that's probably later in the draft.
Yeah, so you see like Derrick Henry's role as like a rotational guy, like a short yardage specialist, something like that
Yeah.
in the NFL.
I think right now, I know this guy's not going to the NFL this year, but he sort of reminds me a lot of James Conner out of Pitt.
Uh,
Sort of that powerful running back that, it's not great in other areas. He's just that power back, not great at catching the ball out of the backfield. He shows he can at occasion, but, his hands not all that consistent. He just wants you to desire more at the running back position.
yes, and another pro comparison that I've heard multiple times is Brandon Jacobs. And we obviously know how what Brandon Jacobs' role was with the Giants during their Super Bowl runs. And yeah, he's just more like that tough grinder who could get the tough yards in like third and short situations and be that power back at the goal line. And I see a role for Derrick Henry like that in the NFL, but definitely nowhere near the workhorse he was at Bama. And another,
So too, I'm sorry to cut you off, but
no
all
problem.
those carries he took, uh, he had over almost 400 carries this past year. I know this is sort of his first year taking on that role, but if you look at any type of running back that's taken that type of beating, he's never held up, especially from the college ranks going pro. Um, so that's sort of another type of concern for me.
As it should be for everybody, because as they say, running backs die fast in the National Football League these days. And let's and let's move on to another prospect. And this kind of leads into our next general topic, but it was reported several weeks ago by Matt Miller of Bleacher Report that Devontae Booker, who is one of my personal favorite running backs to watch during this college football season, his stock is declining because of the knee injury he suffered. How far and to what round do you see Booker falling to?
The latest I think he'll fall to is mid fourth, but if you're looking at his type of player, it's really a torn meniscus. I think it's more of a long term type of concern for him, sort of what people are thinking about with JHI, but not that type of injury. Of course, he is probably my favorite running back in this draft. Sort of that guy who'll just pile through, but he's sort of that every down type guy. He can catch the ball at the backfield, downhill, north south type of runner. I mean, if we're looking for an ideal fit for him, if you look and people are trying to take a bargain for him, look at Pittsburgh. I know they have Le'Veon Bell, but yeah, D'Angelo Williams getting older, and you can't trust Le'Veon Bell and his injury history. So I think that's an ideal situation for him.
That wouldn't be the worst idea at all for Pittsburgh, especially with him coming off an MCL tear and with the ACL intact. And those knee injuries, I believe, are even harder to come back from than ACL tears because how hard it is to operate on just the MCL alone, as it was at Le'Veon Bell's case. And that Devontae Booker leads us into our next general topic. What backs do you see whose stock is rising at the moment, and which backs do you see in terms of whose stock is falling at the moment?
Guys that I see rising, more like a Tyler Irving out of San Jose State, a Daniel Lasco out of Cal. Guys are just sort of in that rotation. Guys are not don't have that frame to be full-time starters. More of that third down type of role. Guys like Alex Collins, they're being pushed up into the high second round. CJ Prosa is a personal favorite of mine. He's being pushed up into the middle of the third. Aaron Green, his stock has been declining ever since the season ended. I have no idea why. Peyton Barber usually was listed probably as like a 6th-round type of player, and now he's being pushed up to mid fourth. And the guy that in this draft, I don't understand why he's not getting that much hype, is Jordan Howard out of Indiana.
Indiana.
And also a guy like Trey Madden out of USC. He sort of has that thick build. He doesn't have all that production because he's been sharing the carries. But I think if you're looking for a sort of change of pace type of guy, he's sort of one of the guys that you should be looking at.
Yes. And speaking of change of pace, guys, another intriguing name that has come up in my conversations with others is DeAndre Washington out of Texas Tech. What are your thoughts on DeAndre Washington?
I'm not as high on him as everybody, but I can see the talent there. But I sort of think it's sort of he has to find the right landing spot. If you were to find a team where he's entrenched by a starter for a couple years, maybe a Minnesota or something like that, he could learn. He just needs a couple years. He's not a day one type of guy, to start day one.
Yes. And thank you for that trade. A lot of those names you mentioned in the stock rising, stock falling is exactly what I've actually come across in recent weeks. And we're going to spice it up a little bit here. I will name one of those prospects that we discussed, and you think of the best possible team fit for him, starting with Zeke Elliott. What do you think is his best fit going forward?
I would have to say the Colts. I know they sort of have that type of player in a way where I've sort of compared Frank Gore to Zeke Elliott, but Frank Gore is a lot stronger, not quite as big. But he sort of not always needed that, great offensive line. He's good in pass protection. That's really good to help a young quarterback in Andrew Luck. You got a guy that, is a great threat in the passing game, so you don't really have to rely on a secondary back. So a guy like him for the Colts is sort of an ideal situation. Another great situation, it's sort of like a dream scenario in that case, is him going to San Diego.
Yeah.
I know they drafted a guy last year, but running backs are sort of you can never have enough backs.
Yes. And beware of those Wisconsin running backs, I'll tell you that.
I never really personally understood the first round hype on Melvin Gordon, but I mean, that's sort of an ideal situation, a guy that can help Phillip Rivers, of course, with the battered offensive line, a guy that can help in the passing game, sort of take over that Danny Woodhead role, and, also 3-down back. I mean, those are ideal positions, but then if you look into the NFC, you got a team like Washington that just drafted a guy last year, but, a lot of people have questions about him being a full-time running back. So I think if you were to find a secondary guy, can take on most of the carries, in more of an ideal scheme fit than what Alfred Morris was.
Yes, and Matt Jones had his fumbling problems last year as well, so Washington would definitely make sense for them to at least consider Zeke Elliott should he fall that far. And you mentioned possible fits for Devontae Booker in Pittsburgh and Alex Collins with the Cowboys. So what about possible fits for Derrick Henry?
I really have it narrowed down to like 3 teams for him. There's not really all that ideal landing spots. Of course, there's the Cowboys. You can make that case. You look at a team like the Niners. I know they have Carlos Hyde, but he sort of fits sort of that San Francisco type of running back, the ideal type of guy. Carlos Hyde has had his injury issues with that foot stress fracture last year that kept him out for the whole year, basically. Um, and then a team like the Patriots, he could take over that LeGarrette Blount type of role.
Yes, especially if the Patriots do not. Wait. I think LeGarrette Blount is still under contract with them, actually, isn't he?
Agent.
Oh, are you sure he's a free agent?
Yeah.
I should double check that because if LeGarrette Blount is a free agent, that could. I'm not ruling out a return, but the Patriots always look elsewhere in running backs. Like their stable varies year to year to year. Belichick is always willing to change at
And then
that
they also
position.
couldn't even look at a running back. They seem to like Tyler Gaffney from Stanford from a few years ago.
Yes.
Sort of an all-purpose type of back, but that's a guy who's never been healthy in the pros.
Yes, Tyler Gaffney, originally drafted by the Panthers in 2014, but was dealt to the Patriots in an under the radar trade.
I thought it was
summer.
He was waived, picked off waivers.
Oh yeah, waivers. That makes sense. Yeah, at first I thought it was a trade, but I believe you're right. I believe it was waivers. So 2 more things to double check for me regarding Patriots running backs later, and let's move to some of those other backs whose stock you see rising. Let's start with Daniel Lasco from Cal.
Personally, I don't understand this hype in some sense. He has a lot of ball security issues. He fumbled the ball at least 4 times in one of his games this year. People can count it on the injury. But, I mean, injury or not, you're going to keep putting the ball on the ground. That's unexcusable. He's always had a share of carries, so I don't see sort of that necessarily build with him. I could see him as a situational third down type of back. A guy to look out that people are not talking about in that case is sort of a similar type of guy, but a lot stronger. Trey Carson out of Texas A&M. You can get him in the later rounds, possibly the 6th or 7th round. He's 6 foot, 220 pounds. Sort of that big build, sort of that north and south runner who can, catch the ball at the backfield. So, I mean, all the things that people are talking about Daniel Lasco, Trey Carson can do it a lot better.
Good point. And you gave me another name that I haven't come across yet. Trey Carson out of Texas A&M, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I'll be sure to check out his film and his scout reports later on. And another name that personally intrigues me, as many, Kenneth Dixon out of La Tech. Where do you think a great fit for Kenneth Dixon is? He, I believe, is definitely one of those change of pace, third down running back options that is going to appeal to several teams.
For him, I've had a hard time finding a spot for him. A team like the Saints seems sort of like an ideal type of fit. But the thing is, they have like 4 different running backs, including if they brought back Tim Hightower. A team like the Seahawks, they sort of need sort of that replacement for like a Fred Jackson. He's also good with catching the ball, the backfield. He can be your change of pace, your third down guy. You got a guy last year out of Eastern Michigan, I believe it was.
Central Michigan, Thomas Rawls.
Yeah. Thomas Rawls, and I think he'd be an ideal running mate for him.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, especially with Fred Jackson old and getting out. Kenneth Dixon would be a replacement. And you mentioned one of your favorites, CJ Prosa. I said he definitely fits that mold of a third down back. Where do you see him landing?
A team like Tennessee has piqued my interest. A team like possibly the Texans. I know they got Lamar Miller, who's sort of uh, flash in the pan, sort of that really quick running back who's good at catching the ball, but needs somebody to spill him out every once in a while.
Tennessee would make sense, especially with DeMarco Murray with the tread on his tires. He would be ideal for an ideal back. However, they still have David Cobb. Why do you think he goes to Tennessee where they still got guys like David Cobb and Antonio Andrews there?
Well, the guys like them, they're not known for catching the ball in the backfield. They're more of that hammerhead in the running game. They're looking for the whole smash mouth thing, which is sort of laughable and hasn't worked in like forever. Um, a guy that can catch the ball in the backfield and run north and south, and also can also be a great contributor in the screen game, a great at pass protection. Also helps out your young quarterback in Marcus Mariota.
Yes, definitely gives him that short air, intermediate, short to intermediate option, especially with offensive line troubles. But speaking of offensive line troubles, that's why I do expect Tennessee, should they keep the first pick, to take Laramie Tunsil to better protect Marcus Mariota. And you mentioned you were in love with Jordan Howard of Indiana. I've seen mocks that place him as high as going in the late second round. What are some potential fits for Jordan Howard?
The Jets is one. He sort of reminds me in a way of Chris Ivory, in a way not as powerful and not as big, but he sort of has that initial burst. He's one of those guys that is not afraid to run away from defenders. He likes to power through them, but also can do a little bit of everything. A knock on him is sort of his pass protection, and his inconsistent hands at times. So I think that's something that can be teachable. To help. You're going to be behind a guy in Matt Forte who's made a living out of doing all that.
Yeah, Matt Forte would be a tremendous person for him to learn from should he go to the Jets. I completely agree. And another name you brought up, the name that's caught my eyes as well, is Tyler Ervin out of San Jose State. And he could be like the best change of pace back there is, not just because he's a change of pace back, because many people the team is one given. So potential fits do you see for Tyler Ervin? I can think of several actually, but you're the guest. You could mention them first.
Tyler Irving, a team, if you look at it, the Ravens, could use another potential change of pace, possible somebody who can take the reins from Justin Forsett a little bit. A team like the Browns, the Packers, they sort of need that sort of a different type of running back from what they're used to. A guy who can catch the ball better than Eddie Lacy and James Starks. A guy who's a different type of runner than them too. Anyways, he's a little bit better in pass protection than Eddie Lacy at times. James Starks, I can't take any credit away. He's really good at pass protection. I guess one last spot I'd point to would be the Falcons, but I don't see that happening. They got two guys in Devontae Freeman, and then they got the guy last year, name's escaping me.
Tevin Coleman. Tevin Coleman, Isaiah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tevin Coleman also out of Indiana. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and another potential landing spot that's been brought up based on conversations with others is the Denver Broncos, and especially with the investment they made by matching the Dolphins obviously for C.J. Anderson. And I've also read from a close friend who has sources within the team that at this time they are not expected to bring Ronnie Hillman back. And Tyler Ervin, you mentioned he is kind of like when you look at him, he's kind of like a Hillman Claude, but he pass protects way better than Hillman, and based on what you said. So the Broncos could be a potential fit. Don't you see them as a potential fit?
I like that fit a lot, but he's not as quite as big as Tillman. But I don't see that as much as a deciding factor. And I think it's a good fit. If you go back in that division, you look at Andy Reid. He likes to collect those types of running backs. I think that'd be also an ideal fit, especially with Jamal Charles getting older.
Yeah, and with Niall Davis also potentially on the trade block, as there was a rumor floating around that the Chiefs will place Niall Davis on the trade block, given the performances of Charcandrick West and Spencer Ware in lieu of Jamal Charles last season.
Well, he's also valuable because of his special teams.
Oh yeah, special
But then
team.
you also have D'Anthony Thomas, sort of that wide receiver running back. They made a new.
Yeah, and Isaiah appears to be having a little matter there, but it seems to be resolved.
A little brother.
I feel you, but that's family first, as they say. And before we go to our final question of the program, Peyton Barber, Matt Miller actually tweeted out like this week, I believe, that Peyton Barber is moving up his board personally, and he could make it. He says late third even is possible for him in his eyes. So, what are your thoughts on potential fits for Peyton Barber?
Peyton Barber, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Giants, Pittsburgh, the Rams. Just throwing some teams out there that need that situational type of runner. He can carry the load for a couple of games. He's more of an ideal backup tier starter, but I think he could probably provide some good services in the NFL. Don't sleep on him if there's an injury on him. I think he could match elite. He could take over load very well. Let's say Carlos Hyde gets hurt, he fills in. Don't be surprised if it becomes a competition the following year. Payne Barber is a really good running back, but his frame sort of suggests otherwise. But, Peyton Barber is just being overlooked, in my opinion.
He's being overlooked in the eyes of many people I speak to, so you're not alone there. And
cousin to Marion Barber III.
Whoa, cousin to Mary Barber, interesting. And he went to Auburn, and yes, and Auburn. They had Trey Mason a couple years ago, and Peyton Barber, based on what we've seen from Trey Mason so far, I think do you think he has equal potential, if not better potential, than Trey Mason?
That's a hard question right there. Trey Mason, I fell in love with the prospect during the whole draft season that year. He was my second running back to Jeremy Hill. I just think he's a different type of cat than him.
Yeah, he's bigger. He's more of a power guy.
Yeah. To me, he's a stronger, more powerful version of Charles Sims, but not that good of hands. Charles Sims, just that type of frame.
Yeah, that's good. And since you appear to be not lost, but
I was taking notes down on prospects I've been watching earlier.
Oh, no problem. I feel you, man. It's that time. Got to get all your notes in before these next 4 weeks, because the odds are you're going to miss a lot of things on tape, and it's time to catch up to all of them at this time. And we are going to conclude the show with. I just want to. You mentioned rankings and mentioning that you had Trey Mason as your second back in 2014. I want to hear your rankings in these 3 distinct categories of backs. I view running backs in 3 distinct categories. Running backs who could be either workhorses or lead dogs in a committee situation, change of pace backs, and dare I say fullbacks, because yes, some people say the fullback is a dying species, but I have a funny feeling with the level of quarterback play. I'm inevitably going to decline in the years ahead in the NFL with Tom Brady and Drew Brees coming up for retirement. It could shift back to a defense-oriented run the ball oriented league, and the fullback could make a comeback. I haven't ruled out that possibility in my head. So rank your top running backs who you think could be workhorses or could be lead dogs in a committee situation.
Workhorses, Alex Collins, I don't see him as a full-time back. Paul Perkins, and then Tyler Irving.
Yeah, so are those more change of pace guys, or do you think that they could be
more of a change of pace than anything? They could provide some other elements in the game, but they're more change of pace than anything.
Yes. What about potential backs who could be lead dogs in a committee situation, or at best workhorses, but at least they could get the lion's share of carries in a committee?
CJ Procise, Kelvin Taylor, Jonathan Williams out of Arkansas.
Yes, Jonathan Williams out of Arkansas. Well, so you said that he can handle a bigger load than Alex Collins. Is that what you're suggesting?
Bigger frame and more powerful, and sort of hold up a little bit more. Yeah. This year's injury is sort of something that happened during the offseason with his foot, and he had to not play at all this past year.
Yes, and that's why his stock isn't as high as Collins, although many people like yourself think he's just as valid an option as his fellow Razorback teammate. And fullbacks. Who are your fullbacks we're taking a chance on later on in the draft? Because the Broncos, they want to bring a fullback back into the mix, and they'll probably be looking for one there, for instance.
Glenn Gronkowski out of Kansas State, Quavon Hicks out of Georgia, and Angie Janovich out of Nebraska.
Yeah, those are three of the names on Matt Miller's board. And I'm wondering, have you heard of Dan Vitale out of Northwestern? You have? Are you not a fan?
He's my fifth fullback. So he's up there. Just I think these guys are a little bit better.
I see. But the fullback is a dying species. But at least one team, as is the case on a yearly basis, will draft one still in the NFL. And that doesn't what'd you say, Isaiah?
The Patriots, look at it. The Patriots could go after Glenn Gronkowski, reunite the Gronk brothers.
They sure can. That would be one of the biggest headlines coming out of draft day or draft weekend if that happens. And that does it for today in our fourth edition of Dash to the Draft. We thank Isaiah Fee, the running back guru, for coming by and sharing his wisdom on this year's rather deep running back class. And we thank you once again, Isaiah, and we definitely hope to have you on the program again in the future.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Isaiah. Take care, everybody. Happy Easter once again, and we will see you next week for another edition of Dash to the Draft here on Sports Crunch with DKROM. Goodbye, everybody.